Hello, Chargers fans, and welcome to another episode of ChargersCast. I'm your host, Kirk Brewer. ChargersCast is a podcast about everything Los Angeles Chargers, by fans, for fans. So I appreciate you being here and hanging out with me while we talk about our beloved Los Angeles, formerly San Diego Chargers. So let's get into it. The last episode, we looked at the roster, how it was evolving through free agency, the draft, and into training camp and the Hall of Fame game. And we talked about how the team looked there. We now have another preseason game under our belt with the New Orleans Saints. So we'll talk a little bit about that game, some observations, and some players that flashed in that game, as well as how some position battles appear to be shaping up. And then today is a special, if you want to call it that, a special morning episode of ChargersCast, because I've been busy all week and haven't had an opportunity to shoot this particular podcast. So here I sit Saturday morning doing the pod, and we'll get it up right away. But at 4 o'clock today, we have the second of three, or the second to last, if you want to say, preseason games against the Los Angeles Rams. So that's at 4 o'clock today. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that game. Again, position battles that we're watching, certain players that we're keeping our eye on, and what we're going to be looking for in that game. So without further ado, let's get into it. Initially, let's talk about the roster. There has not been a whole lot since last pod as far as what's going on with the roster. We signed a few journeyman type players, if you will, an offensive tackle and two cornerbacks. I believe one of those cornerbacks was out of the USFL. At this point, without running down their names, I would characterize these signings really more of anything would be camp bodies, if you will. Excuse me. I don't necessarily think any of these players, unless they just absolutely flash in these last two preseason games, if they even get into these last two preseason games and actually play, unless they flash, I really don't suspect that their chances of making the roster are pretty strong. So, and then the other roster item of note that I have been focusing on is Mekhi Becton. We all know the tragedy of losing Rashawn Slater for the whole season with his blown patellar tendon. We talked about that quite a bit the last pod. But Mekhi has not been practicing for what I believe is the past week or two now. And you know Coach is very nebulous when he's talking about injuries. That's intentional, of course. It's kind of funny to see how he does that. And, of course, Popper keeps pressing. Coach is, I'm not a doctor. But apparently Mekhi's working through something. It's not serious. At this point, it sounds like they fully anticipate that he will be ready for week one. Hate to see him not getting those practice reps with his fellow line mates that are going to be next to him. And obviously with Rashawn going down, there has been some shuffling on the line. And so those reps are valuable. Is he, quarterback or wide receiver? No. However, still, what's Coach always say? Those guys are the tip of the spear. They're a weapon. They're like, the five fingers on the fist. So those guys need to get reps together. And so they're shuffling that line around still and trying to figure out what the best five is. I still believe Salyer's better than, that's my personal opinion, seeing Salyer hold down the left tackle position his rookie season when Slater went down for an extended period of time. And we've seen Pipkins. Okay. I mean, I like him. I think he's a great backup swing tackle, but I've just seen that guy literally potentially get our quarterback killed. And so, Pipkins, Storm Norton. I guess I would say Pipkins a little bit better than Storm Norton was, but I've just seen him just be a turnstile there when he was playing right tackle and almost getting Justin killed. So I suspect Salyer might win that position. They've been raving about him coming in better shape and really working on his technique in the whole bit. And I would love to see Salyer play better than Pipkins, because I think we know what Pipkins is at this point. Okay. So I'd love to see Salyer outplay him and have an upgrade at that position. But Mekhi Becton not being in there, getting these reps, I don't want to say it's the end of the world. He is a veteran. However, still, it's very important that he gets those reps. And so I think we're going to see some issues with the line maybe early on this season. They might be a little more porous than we hope. And then, as we talked about the last pod as well, I will not be surprised if Joe Ortiz, as we are nearing week 1 of the season and we're getting near cut downs where all 32 teams have to cut down from their 90-man roster to 53, that we sign a veteran offensive lineman, probably a tackle, I would suspect, with Slater going down. Sign a veteran offensive tackle that could potentially be a starter, or at least a really high quality backup, or like we did last season when we signed safety Elijah Molden, just before we started the season, and we saw how he played, that we do the same sort of thing where maybe there's a really high caliber offensive tackle that might be getting cut, and instead of letting him enter waiver wire and another team picking him up, that potentially Ortiz whips a trade for a future late round pick or something like that. So offensive line, definitely a place we need to keep our eyes on, between right tackle and still the whole center left guard, between those guys. And then now, our right guard, he hasn't been practicing. So, all right. That's it, roster-related discussions. Let's get into that Saints game. Big picture-wise, observations of that game, I would say it was a little sloppier than the Hall of Fame game. Hall of Fame game, I was really surprised to see the Chargers come out, especially with second, third stringers and, camp bodies, that was a pretty tight game. Very efficient, minimal penalties, minimal mistakes as far as like coverage breakdowns or anything like that. In fact, I don't know if we even had a single play secondary coverage breakdown in the Hall of Fame game. In the Saints game, it was a little sloppier than that. There were a few extra penalties than the Hall of Fame game. There was a mistake or two, definitely a broken coverage on that long ball just after the pick 6 that the Saints second string quarterback had thrown. But all in all, it was still really clean. It was a good performance, very solid. The backups, the rookies played quite well. It was very pleasant to see these guys playing real well and vying for roster spots. The defense continued to play super, super solid ball, between points allowed, sacks, tackles for losses, and turnovers. This is the second week in a row that we've won the turnover battle with not just like one turnover, but multiple turnovers, which bodes very, very well for this defense heading into the regular season. If we can be in the top 5, like we were number 1 last year as far as scoring defense, points allowed defense. If we can be in the top 5 again this year with that and be in the top 5 of the turnover battle on defense, that would be absolutely awesome. So defense is looking really good. Players that flashed to me. First on my list, well, technically he's not first on my list here, but first on the list was Eric Rodgers, the defensive back. The guy had 2 interceptions. One of them was for a pick 6, which is a thing of beauty. Caught it, cut off the route, fell to the ground, got back up, and ran it back decisively. Absolute thing of beauty, absolute flash play. The other guy that's really flashing is linebacker Caleb Murphy. This guy seems to be around the ball constantly. He had, statistically, I believe he had 2 sacks. I'm hearing rumors that he's claiming he had a third that he's not getting credit for, but he's flashing as well. So keep an eye on both of those guys. Unfortunately for Eric Rodgers, he ended up ending the game with a sprained ankle, is what it appears. And so I'm not even sure if he's going to be able to suit up this week against the Rams or next week against the Niners as we head into the last preseason game, which would be a shame because this young man has been playing some great ball and he needs to be out on the field if he's going to make the 53-man roster, which is already, I think, a pretty crowded DB room. So he needs to be out on the field if he's going to make a case for himself. Otherwise, you're looking at this guy going to the practice squad, which I think would probably be worst case scenario for him at this point, and other teams could go snatch him off of our practice squad. So I'd like to see him heal up. And if he can't play this week against the Rams, definitely get back on the field next week against the Niners. Another guy who's flashing, this guy is a rook, our 3rd-round pick, Jamari Caldwell. He continues to be a force in the middle of our defensive line. He's a space eater, requires double teams. He's strong. He's big. Very, very impressed with this guy. Keep your eyes on our interior D-line in general, but keep your eyes out for number 99, Jamari Caldwell. He's been playing really, really well, and the defensive coaches, Jesse Mentor, has been absolutely raving about him. So keep an eye on him. And then just wanted to mention Tarheeb. Tarheeb had an awesome tackle early in this game. His open field tackle out on the wing. And it was very impressive. And so I wanted to throw some love to Tarheeb Steele for an incredibly strong tackle. I believe it was on running back of the Saints. But we need our DBs to be good tacklers, and Tarheeb is showing that he is all of that. And he did last season as well. So a thing to mention. Last player that flashed, and this player unfortunately didn't flash good. He flashed bad, was Miller Hines, the running back we had signed just 2 weeks ago. A guy who'd been out of football for a non-football accident for 2 years, had been on the Colts, was really making a name for himself on the Colts, and then got in a jet ski accident or something and was out of football for 2 years. And we signed him this preseason. Well, he muffed 2 punts, one of which he didn't recover. I think it was the first one early in the game, which ended up being a turnover deep in Chargers territory to the Saints. Now, that gave our defense an opportunity to perform, which they did. They performed admirably and kept the Saints out of the end zone. And I believe the Saints went for it on a 4th down and didn't get it. So they ended up turning the ball over on downs back to the Chargers deep in our territory, like on the 2. And we stopped them from scoring. But you cannot be muffing punts, and you can't be turning the ball over on special teams. You just can't do it. So where we have a crowded running back room behind Hampton and Harris, that doesn't bode well if Miller Hines isn't going to be able to also fill a role on special teams, because that room is getting really crowded with guys that are in there that are performing really well, and we'll talk about them a little bit more here. Moving on to positions, quarterback 2. Okay, last week I told you after the Hall of Fame game, it's like, hey, I don't really think there's a battle for quarterback 2 at this point. Trey Lance is basically fighting for a roster spot as quarterback 3. He's, emergency quarterback, and quarterback 2 is Taylor's job. And I sincerely believe that coming out of the Hall of Fame game, even though Trey Lance looked really good in that game. But, it's preseason. He's playing against their backups, the whole bit, right? However, things can change in a week. And what I saw last week in the Saints game was Taylor started. looked a little uncomfortable. Things didn't go real smooth. Things were a little disjointed, inefficient, dropped ball, missed pass, and it wasn't a smooth operation. And I played a couple of series, and I think completed one pass for 8 yards, I think, maybe two passes for 8 yards, something like that. It wasn't an impressive showing. And I'm not ready to throw him under the bus for that. It's preseason and all. And both Giro and Harbaugh are talking about how well he's doing. He understands the offense, second season in this offense, etc. However, when Trey Lance came in after him, things got better. The offense moved more efficiently, and we actually scored some points. Now, Trey Lance used his legs in some critical situations to extend drives and actually score. And sometimes you need to do that. We're looking at Justin to do more of that again this season and keep defenses, uncomfortable. The fact that he could scramble out of the pocket, and Justin's a big boy and he's fast, right? And so that is an element to the game that is critical, and Trey Lance brings that. And his passes were still really good, nice touch passes, completed some good balls. The offense seemed to run better under him. So as we sit today, heading into today's game against the Rams, we need to watch quarterback 2. We have to watch quarterback 2, because I would say they're absolutely, at this point, the coaches would be looking at this going, this is absolutely a quarterback 2 battle. And we want to see who plays best, right? And I love how Coach expresses this, which is, well, how do you know what the better player is? Well, they play better. I mean, you can see it with your eyeballs if you've been watching football for any period of time and you understand the game and the nuances of the game. And so keep an eye on the quarterback 2 battle. I think it's real. This is not anybody's. I think it's up in the air. I think it's a toss up at this point, and it's anybody's to win. So keep an eye on that. Running backs in the Saints game, Vidal, Haskins, and Sanders. These guys ran really good. Strong, powerful runs, really looking at this running back room. There's some solid running backs and some tough decisions for the coaching staff, because they're probably at most going to keep 4 running backs at most, I would think. Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris, who are those next 2 guys? I'd probably go out on a limb and say Haskins is going to make the team. Special teams. He's a Michigan guy. Harbaugh knows him. And Haskins is probably one I would pencil in, not write him in pen yet, but I'd feel pretty good about laying some money down that Haskins will make the active roster. And then Kamani Vidal's been playing great too. So we'll see how that shakes out. Keep your eyes on these backup running backs. And then wide receivers, there wasn't a whole lot of, I continue to want to see what our rookie wide receivers, Trey Harris and KLS, are doing in preseason. Last week against the Saints, there really wasn't a whole lot to write home about from these 2 guys as far as targets and receptions. But the one receiver that stood out to me is this guy, Delvon Campbell. Man, does this guy look the part too. I mean, he's 6'4", 220 pounds. He can run, and he's a big body. So keep an eye on this guy as well. These are such great problems to have in preseason, where you got some really good talent in camp. And what's Coach always say? Competitors welcome. Well, I wouldn't be feeling real good about myself if I was Brendan Rice. I have a sneaky suspicion at best he's going to be practice squad guy, which means another team could come in and snatch him away from the Chargers. But we're kind of stacked at this point. Yeah, Mike Williams decided to retire abruptly, which I'm still waiting to hear what the heck went down with that. Is it because of his injuries not healing up well? Did the coaching staff ask him or tell him something that he didn't agree with? So he's like, well, I'm just going to call it quits because I'm under contract, right? So he can't just bail on his contract. So I'm going to quote retire. He just kind of don't know what went down there, but he said he's retiring and didn't give a reason why and hasn't held a press conference. So he's just been playing video games is all I can see on Instagram. But we've got Keenan back. Love seeing Keenan back in the powder blue. We've got our boy, Ladidi McConkey, doing Ladidi things. We've got QJ, which I expect his trajectory to continue to be ascending. And having Keenan back in the fold is only going to help that more, I suspect, not less. And then we've got these two rooks, which they're for sure making the team. These guys are exceptionally talented, and having Keenan in the fold, like we talked about last week, is going to do nothing but accelerate their growth. And then we've got this, Del D, right? Our punt returner, kick returner. He's going to make the roster from a special team standpoint, but they've been raving about him in the receiver role this preseason as well, in this training camp. So it sounds like Darius Davis is coming along as a wide receiver as well, with the ability to stretch the field, which is really important for us. And then we've got this Delvon Campbell guy as well. So that, again, it's a great problem to have when we've got some really high caliber talent. But keep an eye on this guy as well. And then KLS. I'll be really trying to watch KLS and Trey Harris. And just a quick mention as well, Oronde Gadsden, our tight end draft choice. Really want to continue to keep an eye on him. We need that pass-catching tight end in this offense. He fits that role to a T. He's fast. He's big. He played wide receiver. So he's got the catching skills, the catch radius, the route running capabilities. So I want to continue to keep an eye on him and see how he develops. They say from day one, he's been coming in at 6 a.m. every day. He's one of the first guys in the building and really putting his nose to the grindstone to learn the playbook and get up to speed on this offense. So keep an eye on him. And then last but not least, our interior D-line. Continue to watch these guys. Hugely important that our interior D-line, if our defense is going to do this season anywhere near what it did last season, that interior D-line, it all starts in the trenches, folks. Yeah, defensive backs, safeties, edge rushers, wide receivers, those are all glamorous positions. But at the end of the day, football is always won in the trenches. If you cannot control the lines of scrimmage, you're just not going to win enough games typically to consistently make the playoffs and give yourself a chance at a Super Bowl. And that's why it's so refreshing to have Harbs come in and know how football is really played. Right? The guy's a quarterback, and he calls offensive linemen and defensive linemen weapons, especially the offensive linemen. So continue to watch the interior defensive line, Jamari Caldwell in particular, but also these two free agents we signed, Hand and Jones. These guys are looking really, really good. And then don't forget, we've got Tierra in there. And so that rotation, just keep an eye on that. These guys are really holding down the fort. All right. Those are my observations from the Saints game. Preseason game, it was our second game. Preseason game number one technically, but our second game in the preseason. This afternoon, we've got a game against the Rams going on. And what are we going to be looking for in this Rams game today? First and foremost, it has been announced that our starters are going to be playing in this game, both on offense and defense. The only two starters I heard Harbaugh mention that won't be suiting up for this game are both on defense, and that is Khalil Mack and Derwin James. For whatever reason, I think maybe he doesn't want to risk them. But if that was the case, then you'd make a case that, Justin's not going to be starting over on the offensive side because he doesn't want to risk him getting injured, right? Every preseason, it seems like he's got a nagging injury that carries into the regular season. But apparently Justin went to him and said, hey, I'd like to get some live rounds in preseason so that the game in week one down in Brazil isn't the first time I'm getting live bullets against an opposing team's defense. And so Harbs is honoring that. And we're going to see both our offensive and defensive starters play a series or two, probably not a whole lot. And what I'm going to be looking at For the starters, no unrealistic expectations, okay? If Justin doesn't throw a 50-yard bomb to Keenan or Ladd, it's not a failure. Our offense is not sucking. What I'm going to be looking for is a continuation of efficiency. Do they not make stupid pre-snap mistakes and pre-snap penalties? So is the line in sync? Is Justin getting good protection? Is Justin, seeing the field, reading the offense, are they efficient? Is he completing passes? It'd be great if they score, but that's not the end all be all. If they're in for one series or two series, are they efficient? Are they knocking the rust off, getting ready for the preseason, or the regular season? And just how are they playing? If Justin's missing passes, receivers are dropping balls, the defense is getting to Justin regularly on a series or two, the line's not blocking good for the running backs, really going to be looking at O'Marion, Hampton, looking at our receivers, looking at the chemistry with Justin and Keenan, see how that is reestablishing itself. Does he get a ball into Ladd? That stuff. Are we functioning properly? That's really the biggest thing for me. It's not long bombs and, do we score on every drive that Justin's in? That's not what I'm looking for. It's efficiency, running the offense. Those are the keys. And of course, no injuries to any of our starters. It doesn't sound like Mekhi Becton will be playing. He's still working through something like we've talked about. So looking at that offensive line rotation, that's going to be very important as well. See how those guys perform. Positions, I'm going to be watching once the starters are out and we're back into evaluating the back end of the roster. Nothing's really changed there. Looking at our wide receivers, which is a stacked room like we've talked about. See who's starting to rise to the top or differentiate themselves. Same in this running back room after Hampton and Najee Harris. Who is going to claim the third and fourth running back spots? Who's going to, again, separate themselves from the rest of the room? And then the defensive line and edge. After Thule, Bud, and Khalil, who is really separating themselves on the edge? Okay, we've got our fourth round pick, Kyle Kennard. He hasn't flashed. I haven't seen him flash at all yet in preseason. But we've got some other guys that are, like Caleb. Caleb was flashing. Caleb Murphy. Sorry about that. He's been flashing at the linebacker spot. And another guy on the edge, what was his name? Brash Morris from last season. He ended up not making the 53-man roster, but was on the practice squad. He's back again this season. He's had a couple splash plays as well, where he's really disrupting the backfield. So that's the other part I'm going to be looking at, is not just the interior D-line, but the backup edges. And then these young players who have flashed, to see if they can continue to flash. Nico Reed flashed in the Hall of Fame game. Eric Rogers, let's hope he can actually suit up this week. I haven't heard whether he will or he won't. But Eric Rogers, the DB who flashed last week, Caleb Murphy, who's been flashing, or maybe someone new. Who else is going to try and get the coach's attention and say, hey, I deserve a spot on this otherwise really talented 53-man roster. So there you have it for the Rams game today. We've got starters. This is going to be the first time in Justin's fifth year. This is going to be the first time he has started in preseason. And so this is going to be really interesting to watch our starters play a series or two. I would be shocked if they play more than two series, but we'll see. We'll see. And they're going against a known opponent. They were supposed to have some scrimmages this week, but Harbaugh called them off because the Chargers are banged up. And I think that we've got 4 preseason games where the rest of the league has 3. So they're getting the practice in against opponents. Harbaugh wanted to limit some of that to maybe minimize another injury or two, but that's also why I think he's agreed to play the starters in this particular game. I do not think we will see starters in the last preseason game on the road against the Niners. So I think this is just knock some rust off and get some snaps under live fire against an actual opponent. So that's it for the Rams game this afternoon. It's 4:00 Pacific time. A few little housekeeping items. If anybody out there is interested in coming and hanging out with me and appearing on ChargersCast, I would love to hear from you. Throw some comments or a comment below that, hey, Kirk, I would love an opportunity to come on ChargersCast and hang out with you and talk Chargers ball. Andrew and Brennan from last season haven't been able to hang out with me yet, and I'm not sure what their schedules are going to be like, but I love having other Chargers fans here. I think it adds a kind of a whole nother dynamic. And so would love to have other Chargers fans participating in the pod. So reach out, leave a comment down below. I can't have everybody on, but would definitely love to have one or two of you diehard Chargers fans on the pod with me and getting some different perspectives. I've been a fan for over 40 years. I have my perspectives, but it's not always one way's right, one way's wrong. It really, I think, benefits the podcast and the folks who tune into it to hear a little bit different opinions about the team, the roster, the approach that the coaches are taking, the players. So hit me up down below. And if you don't want to be on the pod, but you have something to say, leave me a comment below as well. And if you aren't already following us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit the little bell so that when we post new episodes, you get notified. I love having you guys participating on the podcast. And then finally, if you guys would love some cool ChargersCast merch, down below is the link to the ChargersCast store, and that's where you can find cool Chargers merch. Right now, it's ChargersCast merch, pardon me. It's not Chargers merch, but cool stuff like Make the Chargers Great Again. And we've got a few other things out there, like awesome coffee mug. Like I said, it's a morning edition today. So we've got some awesome stuff like that. Right now, there's a limited selection, but please go check it out. I think you'll like it. And as we get closer to starting the season, there will be some new additional cool ChargersCast / Chargers merch out there for all of you diehard fans. So there you have it. That's it for another episode of ChargersCast. Sorry it is so late in the week that it's actually the morning of game day, but appreciate you guys. Wanted to get this out, share my 2 cents with you as far as how the Bolts are looking here in preseason and what I'm looking at as they continue to make their way through preseason to get ready for week 1 in Brazil against the hated Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, so appreciate you guys tuning in. You guys know the drill. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. Thanks. See you guys next week after the Rams game. We'll cover the Rams game. We'll talk about the upcoming final preseason game against the Niners and how the roster's shaping up, how things are looking. And we'll see you guys here again next week. Bolt up. Hi, I'm Kirk Brewer, the creator and host of ChargersCast. I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of ChargersCast. We really appreciate you engaging with the podcast. When I created ChargersCast, it was intended to be a podcast about everything Los Angeles Chargers from a fan perspective. It's by fans and for fans. So it's for you, and we really appreciate you being here. If you haven't done so already, please go down below, leave a comment, give us some feedback. We really love to hear from you. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and click the little bell so that you get notifications when new content drops. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to ChargersCast. And who's got it better than us? Nobody.